The hospital in Victorville was a beacon of fluorescent light in the desolate night. Its sterile glow a stark contrast to the inky darkness that swallowed the Mojave Desert. For Sarah, a 32-year-old nurse working grueling 12-hour night shifts, the end of her shift in late July 2022 felt like emerging from a dream. Her body ached, her mind fogged with exhaustion, as if the world moved in slow motion, each step heavy with the weight of countless patient charts and beeping monitors. By 7 a.m., the sun was already a merciless tyrant, scorching the cracked asphalt of the hospital parking lot. She grabbed a stale coffee from the vending machine, its bitter taste barely registering, and exchanged weary goodbyes with her colleagues before sliding into her aging sedan for the hour-long drive home to Barstow. The journey was her ritual decompression, a solitary escape where the open road and the hum of her favorite indie playlist could unravel the tension knotted in her shoulders. The highway stretched endlessly through the desert, a ribbon of black cutting through an ocean of sand and sagebrush. About 30 miles from home, she entered a desolate stretch where civilization vanished. No gas stations, no diners, not even a flickering cell tower to break the monotony. The landscape was raw and unforgiving, with heat waves shimmering like mirages distorting the horizon into a liquid haze. Halfway through this barren expanse, a faint ticking sound from her engine snapped her out of her reverie. The temperature gauge on her dashboard crept upward, the needle inching toward the red zone. She tapped it with a finger, a futile gesture born of habit, but the air conditioning sputtered, exhaling a puff of hot, stale air. A warning light blinked, ominously. With a sinking feeling, Sarah eased the car onto the gravel shoulder, the engine coughing and knocking like a dying beast. She killed the ignition, and silence descended, broken only by the faint hiss of heat escaping the hood. Stepping out, she was hit by a wall of blistering heat, the sun searing her skin like a branding iron. The hood radiated warmth in visible waves, and she hesitated to touch it. Her phone, predictably, showed no bars. Cell service was a cruel joke out here. She twisted open her water bottle, the lukewarm liquid barely quenching her thirst, and leaned against the driver's door, squinting down the empty highway. Not a single car in sight. The desert seemed to mock her, its vastness amplifying her isolation. 10 minutes dragged by, each second stretching under the oppressive sun. Sarah debated walking to find help, but the nearest town was miles away and the heat could kill faster than dehydration. She was about to check her trunk for the emergency kit her father had insisted she carry when the low rumble of an engine broke the silence. A battered white pickup truck emerged from the haze, its tires kicking up clouds of dust as it slowed and pulled onto the shoulder behind her car. A man stepped out mid-50s, his face weathered like the desert itself. He wore a faded ball cap, aviator sunglasses that hid his eyes, and grease-stained jeans tucked into scuffed work boots. He raised a hand in a casual wave, his voice carrying a drawl that seemed too friendly for the desolate setting. "You okay, miss?" he asked, shielding his eyes from the sun. Sarah's tension eased slightly. He didn't look dangerous, just a local, maybe a mechanic or a rancher, the kind of person who knew these roads like the back of their hand. Still, she stayed close to her car, fingers brushing the door handle. "Car overheated," she said, forcing a smile that felt brittle. "Just letting it cool." "Mind if I take a peek?" he asked, already moving toward the hood. She nodded, reluctant but desperate. He propped the hood higher and leaned in, his hands moving with practiced ease over the engine. Sarah watched from a distance, her instincts urging caution. That's when she noticed it. Through the open driver's side window of his truck, the interior was a chaotic mess of fast food wrappers, crumpled soda cans, and tangled clothes. But what froze her blood were the two license plates, one from Nevada, the other from Arizona, propped on the passenger seat like trophies. Why would someone carry multiple plates unless they were hiding something? Her heart thudded, a primal alarm screaming in her chest. She didn't think twice. Slipping into her car, she locked the doors with a satisfying click, the sound a small shield against the growing unease. The man straightened, wiping his hands on a rag, and approached her window. "Try starting it now," he said, his voice calm but carrying an edge she hadn't noticed before. He tapped the hood, then lingered, watching her. "I think I'll wait a bit," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Let it cool more." He smiled, but it was wrong. Too tight, too knowing, like a predator sizing up prey. "No problem," he said, his tone almost mocking. "But town's a long way off. Sure you don't need a ride?" She shook her head, clutching her useless phone. "I'm good. Thanks." For a moment he didn't move, his gaze boring through the glass. Then slowly, deliberately, he tested the passenger door handle. Click. He moved to the back door. Click. Then the driver's side rear. Click. Each sound was a gunshot in the silence, her pulse hammering in her ears. Sarah fumbled with her phone, pretending to dial, holding it to her ear as if someone could hear her. No service, but she needed him to think she wasn't alone. He rapped lightly on her window, his voice low, barely audible through the glass. "You know there's bad folks out here, gotta be careful." His smile stretched too wide, revealing teeth stained yellow. Then he turned, strolling back to his truck with a lazy confidence that made her skin crawl. Panic surged, and Sarah slammed her hand on the horn, the blaring sound shattering the desert stillness. Long, desperate blasts echoed across the empty highway. The man froze, leaning against his truck, unfazed, as if waiting for her to tire herself out. Then, AI miracle, a family-sized SUV towing a boat appeared in the distance, its engine a faint hum growing louder. The man's expression darkened. He spat into the dirt, climbed into his truck, and peeled away, tires spraying gravel as he vanished in the opposite direction. The SUV slowed, and a middle-aged man with two teenagers in the back rolled down his window. "You need help?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Sarah nodded, tears stinging her eyes as relief flooded her. They had a satellite phone and called a tow truck, staying with her until it arrived, their presence a lifeline in the desolate heat. When she finally reached her small apartment in Barstow, exhaustion clung to her like a second skin. She filed a police report, describing the man, his truck, and the license plates in vivid detail. The officers exchanged a glance that chilled her. They revealed a pattern of attacks along isolated desert highways. Lone women, broken down cars, and a good Samaritan who left no trace. Some victims vanished entirely. Others left only their abandoned vehicles behind. The police promised to investigate, but their faces betrayed little hope. The desert was too vast, the man too slippery. Sarah traded her old car for a new one, stocked her trunk with emergency supplies, and downloaded offline maps. She bought a small crowbar, tucking it under her seat, a cold comfort against the memory of that day. She avoids that stretch of highway now, but the fear lingers. The scariest part wasn't the broken car or the lack of signal. It was the realization that he hadn't stopped to help her. He'd stopped to ensure she'd disappear. Into the desert, another ghost swallowed by the sand. Clara, a 28-year-old veterinary assistant, felt suffocated by the grind of city life in Denver. Her days were a blur of barking dogs, anxious pet owners, and the constant hum of traffic outside her apartment. By spring 2023, the walls of her routine were closing in, her spirit craving open skies and silence. A colleague mentioned a secluded cabin in rural Wyoming, a rustic retreat 10 minutes off the main highway, surrounded by endless prairie and not a soul for miles. It sounded like salvation, a place to breathe, to reconnect with herself. Clara booked it for a weekend, packing light, a duffel bag with groceries, a few novels, and her well-worn hiking boots. The drive from Denver was a revelation. Towering, clouds drifted like cotton castles across a cerulean sky, and golden fields swayed in the breeze, whispering freedom. As she left the highway, the road narrowed, asphalt giving way to crumbling gravel, then packed dirt flanked by rusted fence posts. The isolation was palpable, the world shrinking to just her and the vast Wyoming landscape. 20 minutes from the cabin, Clara spotted something odd. A rusted van parked 30 feet off the road, its frame sagging as if abandoned mid-thought. Its windows were caked with grime, one back door slightly ajar, revealing nothing but darkness inside. No tracks led to or from it, no signs of life nearby. Her stomach tightened, a faint prickle of unease urging her to keep moving. She pressed the gas, the van shrinking in her rearview mirror, and told herself it was just a relic left to rot by some long-gone traveler. The cabin was everything she'd hoped for. A cozy wooden structure with a sagging porch, a single bed, and a view of prairie grass stretching to the horizon. She checked the locks, tested the windows, and placed an emergency flashlight by the bed. No cell service, but she'd expected that. After unpacking, she cracked a cold beer, made a turkey sandwich, and settled on the porch, the quiet washing over her like a balm. For the first time in months, her shoulders relaxed, the weight of her daily grind lifting. That night, a fierce wind howled across the prairie, rattling the cabin's old beams. Clara built a small fire in the wood stove, its flickering glow casting shadows that danced across the walls. She curled up with a book, the wind's mournful cry lulling her into a doze. Around midnight, a sharp sound jolted her awake. 3 deliberate knocks at the front door, each one heavy and purposeful. Her breath caught, heart pounding as she strained to hear more. Silence, save for the wind's relentless wail. She crept to the window, avoiding the firelight, and peered through a gap in the curtain. Her blood ran cold. The van was there, parked at the base of the driveway, its rusted frame unmistakable in the moonlight. No headlights, no engine noise, just a hulking shadow, silent and waiting. She couldn't see the driver's seat, but the slightly open back door seemed to beckon, a black maw in the dark. Panic clawed at her chest, but Clara forced herself to think. The doors were locked, the windows bolted. She was safe inside. For now. She snuffed out the fire, plunging the cabin into darkness, and grabbed her keys and flashlight. The knocking came again, slower, almost taunting, as if testing her resolve. She couldn't stay, couldn't wait to see what happened if she opened the door. The cabin had a side exit leading into the woods. If she could slip out unnoticed, she could circle through the trees to her car and escape. With trembling hands, she eased open the side door, the cold air biting her skin. She crouched low, darting into the dense forest, branches snagging her jacket and scraping her face. She didn't dare use the flashlight until she was deep in the trees, shielding the beam with her sleeve to avoid detection. The knocking echoed, faintly behind her, a sinister rhythm in the night. The woods thinned near the dirt road and her car came into view, parked in a gravel pull-off. She sprinted, fumbling with the key fob, the locks chirping as she yanked the door open. Sliding inside, she jammed the key into the ignition, praying the engine would turn over. It roared to life, the sound deafening in the quiet. As she threw the car into reverse, her headlights swept across the driveway, catching a figure standing halfway to the cabin. Motionless, facing the house, it was a silhouette of menace. No gear, no movement, just watching. Clara gunned the engine. Tires, spitting gravel as she tore down the dirt road. She didn't stop until she reached a 24-hour diner on the edge of the nearest town, its neon sign a beacon of safety. Stumbling inside, she used the payphone to call the sheriff, her voice shaking as she recounted the van, the knocking, the figure. The next morning, deputies found pry marks on the cabin's front door and scuff marks near the latch, signs of an attempted break-in. The van was gone, leaving no trace. They warned her about isolated rentals being targeted by thieves, or, worse. Hard to find someone who doesn't want to be found out here, one deputy said, his voice heavy with resignation. Clara never returned to that cabin. The memory of those polite, patient knocks haunts her, a reminder that the figure wasn't trying to scare her. He was waiting for her to make a fatal mistake. Lila, a 30-year-old yoga instructor, was unraveling. A brutal breakup and a year of teaching back-to-back classes had left her drained, her spirit frayed like an old rope. She craved solitude, a place to mend her soul away from the noise of Seattle's crowded streets. Olympic National Park beckoned, a pristine wilderness of towering evergreens and quiet trails where she could be alone with her thoughts. She chose a remote backcountry site, a small clearing by a babbling stream accessible only by a long hike. It felt like stepping off the edge of the world. The trek-in was exhausting but exhilarating, the forest swallowing her in a cocoon of green. By late afternoon, she reached the site, the sun casting golden rays through the canopy. She set up her tent, built a small fire, and settled in with a book, the stream's gentle murmur blending with the wind in the treetops. For the first time in months, she felt free, unburdened by expectations. Sleep came easily, deep and dreamless. The next morning, Lila unzipped her tent and froze. Just outside the entrance was a strange bundle. Twigs bound with plant fiber, adorned with feathers and coarse strands that looked disturbingly like human hair. It was too precise to be random debris, too deliberate to be a prank. Unease prickled her skin, but she rationalized it. Maybe a local tradition, or a hiker's odd gift. She left it untouched, brewed coffee, and set off for a day hike. The forests, silence both comforting and oppressive. When she returned at dusk, the bundle was gone. Relief washed over her. An animal must have taken it. She cooked dinner, the fire's crackle her only company, and slept soundly, lulled by the patter of rain on her tent. But in the dead of night, a sensation woke her. Not a sound, but the unshakable feeling of being watched. She lay still, heart racing, straining to hear anything over the rain. Nothing. She drifted back to sleep, uneasy, but exhausted. Morning brought a new horror. Inside the tent, inches from her sleeping bag, was another bundle, identical to the first, its twigs and hair glistening with rain. Her breath hitched. She hadn't heard the zipper, hadn't felt a presence. Someone had entered her tent, placed it there, and left without a sound. Panic surged, and Lila packed in a frenzy, her hands shaking as she stuffed gear into her bag. She didn't eat, didn't think, just moved, driven by the need to escape. The hike out was a blur of mist and paranoia. Every rustle in the underbrush set her nerves alight. Halfway to the trailhead, a flash of pale movement caught her eye, a figure darting behind a tree. She froze, waiting, but saw nothing. She pushed on, faster now, her pepper spray clutched tightly. Another flash, closer this time, maybe 30 yards off the trail. A low whistle, 3 sharp notes cut through the wind, chilling her to the bone. She didn't look back, didn't stop, her legs burning as she reached the parking lot. Her car was untouched, a lifeline in the clearing. She locked herself inside, catching her breath, the forest looming through the windshield. At the ranger station, she spilled the story, her voice trembling. The ranger's face darkened when she mentioned the bundles. Sometimes people out here, off-grid types, groups, mark people with those, she said, like tagging, claiming you. Lila drove to a noisy motel in the city, double-locking the door. She hasn't camped alone since, haunted by the thought that she wasn't just a visitor in those woods. She was prey. Mark, a 45-year-old wilderness guide with 2 decades of experience, was no stranger to the wild. He'd faced bears, blizzards, and panicked tourists, always trusting his instincts and the logic of the backcountry. In October 2021, he set out, on a solo 5-day loop in northern Idaho's Selway Bitterroot Wilderness, to check trail conditions for the Forest Service. Armed with a Garmin satellite beacon, ample supplies, and a weather forecast predicting cold and rain, he felt prepared for anything. The first 2 days were idyllic. Golden tamarack needles falling like confetti, the air crisp and clean. The trails were quiet, the solitude a welcome companion. On the 3rd day, as drizzle gave way to a sharp chill, Mark hiked along a narrow ridge trail, a steep drop to his left and a valley sprawling to his right. Late afternoon, with storm clouds gathering, he spotted something on the next ridge, a silhouette against the darkening sky. At first it looked like a dead tree, but a lightning flash revealed a human figure, motionless, facing him. Hikers weren't uncommon, but this figure was wrong. No gear, no movement, just an eerie stillness. Mark paused, squinting through the fading light. Another flash confirmed it. Still there, arms at its sides, unwavering. He told himself it was a stump, a trick of the storm, but doubt gnawed at him. He pressed on, glancing back with every few steps. The figure appeared and vanished with the terrain, but each lightning strike showed it watching him. That night, camped in a clearing, Mark barely slept. The wind howled, and every creak of the pines sounded like footsteps. By dawn, he was moving, determined to reach the trailhead. 5 miles out, in a spot with clear sightlines, he made the mistake of looking back. The figure was there, 200 yards across the valley, still facing him. No backpack, no visible weapon, just an unnatural presence. Mark's heart raced, but he stayed calm, knowing panic could lead to injury. The figure followed, always at a distance, never closing in but never disappearing. By noon it was closer, 100 yards now, still motionless, as if teleporting when he wasn't looking. A storm rolled in, rain masking his tracks, but the sense of being hunted grew stronger. When he reached his truck, he threw his gear in and sped off, not daring to look back. At home, unpacking his gear, Mark found faint mud streaks inside his sleeping bag, as if dirty fingers had brushed it in the night. He didn't tell anyone, afraid they'd dismiss it as exhaustion. But when storms darken his windows, he still checks the tree line, half expecting that figure, waiting, watching, never gone. These stories linger because they remind us how thin the line is between safety and danger in the wild. Trust your gut. It might be the only thing keeping you alive when help is too far away. Stay sharp, stay safe, and watch your back. The middle of nowhere isn't always empty.